case is quickly shaping up to be not only one of the most mysterious, but a case and tragic and just downright shocking, not just in modern history, but in all of history, because this is just absolutely brutal and tragic. And there's, again, all of this attention online. People just can't believe how not only can something like this happen, but how the perpetrator or perpetrators cannot be found immediately in an era of not just widespread surveillance, but particularly this specific area right next to a university, right next to an apartment building, right next to many other buildings. And now, as we've found, with police nearby as the murders were occurring. And there is body cam footage that has been released of police hassling some people walking after drinking, some students, right near the area. Literally a block or so away, within visual sight of the house. I mean, it's just, the amount of rabbit holes this case is developing is just, it's nothing short of mind-shocking. We'll go over all of them, and of course, the pursuit for justice. I don't think awareness is necessarily needed at this point, just because it's all the awareness is already through the roof. Obviously, on Mindshock, we cover a lot of cold cases as well. So awareness is at an all-time high, which is obviously a good thing. So the pressure is on. And hopefully the police can solve this very, very quickly, because obviously the longer it goes on, the probability of closing this case drops substantially. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help support Mindshock. Help us get more mind-shocking content out there with logic and reason at the forefront in a world where it is quickly becoming extinct. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Support the channel that way. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share to Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for a case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast request. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. So just looking through this body cam footage, on the surface, it appears that these individuals are all unrelated. I believe the police have officially stated that this is unrelated. If you listen to the audio here, it's fairly innocuous. It is obviously very difficult to believe that any of these students would be involved. And the time frame here is pretty much the exact time in question, from before 3 a.m. to after 3 a.m. So while the murders are going on, theoretically, unless the murders happen later, again, I don't know if there's been a confirmed time of death, but from the girls' calls to allegedly if they went to sleep and were killed shortly after, around 3, whatever the timeline being thrown around is, the police are, and that's another thing too, the police have nothing better to do than have undercover plainclothes officer hassling kids walking with that may have been drinking alcohol, that they're underage or whatever. It's just, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms, but it's just so weird, because while this stop is taking place, is there a quadruple murder going on at the same time that these officers are hassling these kids? What is going on a few dozen feet away? Now, there's a lot of blurs on the video and everything too, which is kind of weird, because not only blurring the identity of these people, but blurring most of the screen as well. But you can make out a few vehicles parked here, and supposedly none of these particular vehicles are the vehicles in question. So if they were killed between 3 and 4 a.m., it's 3:15 a.m. at the closure of the stop. So it's possible that this stop occurred before the murders took place. But so the police left, the murders took place, what, 10, 15 minutes later, an hour later? And that just goes, again, the brazen nature of these perpetrators, because were they actually watching the house at this time? Did they see the cops there? Or did they not know about it? Did they see the cops, see them leave, or other people walk and leave? Because, again, this is a college town. There's people walking all over the place all the time. There's parties going on. A lot of this just, it's really tough to make heads or tails here, because it's just, this is not the area that one would think a crime like this would happen. So the full extended footage here, I mean, it's over 40 minutes long from we got 2:53 a.m. If that timestamp is accurate, of course, we don't necessarily know that it is. 3:15 a.m. from different body cams here. Yeah, very, very mind-shocking. Let's go over an article here from Eyewitness News. Thursday, December 8th, 2022. New police body cam released as investigators reveal new lead in killing of Idaho college students. Police also start removing victims' belongings from the house. Authorities are trying to track down a car they say was in the area the night 4 University of Idaho students were killed. Investigators think that whoever was in it may have some important information to the investigation. A new clue has been released Thursday in the Idaho murder mystery. Detectives are now asking the public for help locating a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra with an unknown license plate, saying they're interested in speaking with its occupants who may have critical information to share regarding this case. Occupants, that's a plural. Now, is that just generalized, or did they specifically know there was more than one person in the vehicle? Police said the car was in the immediate area of the home where the victims were killed early on November 13th. That can mean a number of things. It could be that they have eliminated all the cars in the proximity of the victim's house. They cannot figure out what or why this car was there that night. This could just be an elimination. It could be a witness, or it could be a suspect, said ABC contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett. Now, as the investigation enters its 26th day, ABC News obtained new body cam footage from that night, showing an unrelated police stop nearby at about 3 a.m., which is around the time authorities believe the murder took place. Police stopping 3 people for an alcohol offense in a field near the victim's home and near the Sigma Chi fraternity, where 2 of the victims, Zaina Kernodle and Ethan Chapin, had been earlier that night. All the people in the video have been cleared, and the incident was not related to the murders, but analysts say the video could still be used in the case. It can be used from a historical standpoint. The information could potentially become relevant later in the investigation. You just never know, Garrett said. What's that supposed to mean? The victim's home remains an active crime scene. However, on Wednesday, investigators gathering items no longer needed in the investigation to give to the victims' families. We just went in to gather belongings so that the family can have some of that stuff. You know, we have a job to do. We're going to do it to the best of our ability, and we owe this to the family. We owe this to the victims, said Chief James Fry with the Moscow Police Department. So, again, unclear the exact origination of this tip regarding the Hyundai Elantra. So, Idaho Statesman, December 8th, 2022, update, Moscow police seek public's help to contact occupant of a Hyundai Elantra. A few more details here. So, Moscow police say a white vehicle seen in the November 13th body camera video is not the Hyundai Elantra under investigation. Moscow police say they are still looking to speak with the occupants of a white Hyundai Elantra that they believe was near the area at the time of the homicide. Occupants, that's a plural. But in the original story, it says in the news release, detectives said they want to speak with the person driving a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra and passengers if there were any. Okay, so yeah, it's tough to kind of figure out what that could mean there. So they might not be sure. So apparently last weekend, December 10th and 11th, Idaho police said that the murderer might strike again. Obviously, there's been no such report, but from the Daily Mail here, Idaho cops sparked fears quadruple murderer could strike again this weekend as they warn students attending the commencement to stay in groups and keep phones handy. Idaho cops sparked fears the murderer who killed 4 college students could strike again as they warned youngsters attending commencement to stay in groups. Moscow police told visitors to the city to keep in touch with their friends and family and stay vigilant during the celebration on Saturday. The commencement ceremony marks an important weekend for the city and will see a large influx of visitors coming into Moscow from out of town. But Police Chief James Fry offered some reassurance. His department is deploying more officers to the streets and university for the event. The warning comes after 4 college students were brutally stabbed to death in their off-campus home November 13th. 4 weeks on, the killer is yet to be caught. Moscow police said Saturday morning they had more than 10 investigators looking into the murders, and nearly 50 FBI agents are working to crack the case, including a number in Moscow itself. We're working steady on the investigation still, said Fry. We're still pushing forward. The warning comes as the Moscow Police Department, who have yet to make much headway in the investigation, have said they will now crack down on internet sleuths. As last month's stabbings captured the nation's attention, sleuths on the internet began posting popular theories about the murders to fill the void from the Idaho police, who have been criticized for sharing little and repeatedly contradicting themselves. On Friday, Fry condemned the amount of speculation and rumors surrounding the case, saying police have the sole authority to release the facts of the case. We want people to pay attention to what we're putting out there because that is accurate information, and anything that comes from other sources is either rumor or speculation. I mean, that's kind of what happens when you have the monopoly on violence and justice in a statist society, because no matter how bad the results are from law enforcement, that this monopolization prevents other good-hearted, well-meaning, and competent people from assisting in investigations, unfortunately. I mean, the clearance rate for homicides are not good. So despite all this extra surveillance, a surveillance state, cameras everywhere, instant communication with phones, all of this forensic technology, I mean, the clearance rate is simply not good. If you're averaging all jurisdictions in the U.S., your homicide, if you're killed, your murder is more likely to be unsolved than solved, unfortunately. And that's only factoring the known wrongful convictions. Obviously, there's a certain percentage, whether big or small, of innocent people in prison who have not yet been exonerated. So, yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. So let's move on now to some rabbit holes, because you cannot make this stuff up. Back to meaw.com. Who was Hannah Clear? Madison Mogen's rumored ex-roommate killed herself after being bullied, allegedly. Online sleuths have independently investigated the Idaho murder case and have devised several theories about why someone was out to kill the 4 victims by Varnica Srivastava, December 9th, 2022. A new hypothesis recently circulated on Twitter that one of the victims in an Idaho murder case was a bully, and their actions had led to the suicide of Madison Mogen's former roommate. This article is based on sources, and I cannot verify this information independently. And of course, this is Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue here. The entire motto of the podcast is, of course, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But I really don't understand why all these trigger goofs are going around and just getting instantly triggered at anybody theorizing. Now, obviously, anybody calling for any kind of harassment, I mean, that's inexcusable. But simply objectively discussing theories without claiming they are true or untrue, I mean, anything to keep the awareness up and keep pressure on law enforcement and keep this in the public consciousness to make sure that true justice is obtained. I mean, how is that a bad thing? Not to mention, obviously, in certain cases, online sleuthing does lead to solving cases. So the article here: the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students have rocked the small and usually peaceful college town. All 4 victims, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Coronado, and Ethan Chapin, were killed in a 3-story rented home off campus in the early hours of November 13th. They were all 20 to 21 years old. Police have not yet identified the suspect or suspects in the case. Online sleuths have independently investigated the Idaho murder case and have devised several theories about why someone would want to kill the 4 victims. A new hypothesis recently circulated on Twitter that one of the victims in an Idaho murder case was a bully and their actions had caused a former roommate to take her own life. Who was Hannah Clear? A Twitter user claimed the quadruple homicide is connected to Hannah Clear, who was supposedly an ex-roommate and shared her dorm room with one of the Idaho victims. As per claims made in the tweet, they bullied and harassed Clear, who eventually took her own life February 24th, 2022. The user wrote, Hannah Clear took her life in February. She shared a dorm with one of the victims and got bullied. Her birthday, November 15th. With the post, the user has even shared 2 images. One of the images supposedly of Hannah Clear, which is captioned, Hannah was born on November 15th, 2000, and passed away February 24th, 2022 at the age of 21. A user from Instagram had commented on Madison Mogen's post after she died, commenting, "You deserved everything that happened to you, especially after what you did to that poor girl. You elitists are all the same. I'll be reserving my spit once they properly bury you." I mean, that is an insane post, of course. That's pretty crazy. These hostile comments were made by Instagram users on Madison's profile as these bullying theories were pushed by internet conspiracy theorists, but there is absolutely no proof about if these theories hold any water or if they have even a shred of truth to them. Despite the fact that they are still unaware of whether the attacker specifically targeted the students or their apartment, police highlighted their concerns about the incidents once more on December 1st. Although no suspects have been identified or a murder weapon has been located, the public has been urged to come forward with any information that might help solve the case. So, a couple of points here. First of all, to those, there's people claiming, again, I have no knowledge of this case and this ex-roommate. But people committing murder often stage it as a suicide. And people who actually are legitimately suicidal and have even voiced these suicidal tendencies or thoughts of any kind or even plans, there's no magic Dungeons and Dragons spell in the universe where if you want to commit suicide, somehow that means no predators, no murderers, nobody looking to harm you will do it. There's no magic protection spell. So I don't know why all these people discussing true crime, especially so-called true crime aficionados, they're that utterly clueless that they think that just because someone might be planning to commit suicide or is suicidal, that means there's zero chance any kind of murder would ever target them for any reason. Really weird. Or particularly target them and then stage it as a suicide if they thought there was a greater chance of them getting away with it, particularly if an individual was really suicidal. So, again, just keeping that in mind. I'm not saying that's the case here, obviously. There's no way to know that. I'm not claiming this is the case here. But if this was only one rabbit hole, I mean, there seem to be quite a few here. Because there's also, and if these really are murders, so this average of 0 murders in Moscow, it might not be true. Because we have yet another death here, Hudson Lindau. Another University of Idaho student's death this year sparks speculation. So also on Mia here by Varnika Srivastava, December 7th, 2022. Does anyone care to explain this? University of Idaho student Hudson Lindau was found dead in Paradise Creek. This case has shaken the whole town as the investigation continues. Still, with no suspects and arrests in hand, the growing pressure from the victim's family and speculation from internet sleuths have made this case more complex and fragile. Recently, a Twitter user revealed other chilling details from Idaho that were previously shared on Facebook, but about someone else who wasn't a victim of the aforementioned incident. How did Hudson Lindau die? The user has unveiled an individual named Hudson Lindau who was found dead in Paradise Creek January 5th, 2022. His death was due to accidental drowning, but this user has alarmed some speculating questions about his death. The post has even scrutinized the police of Moscow and its working authorities in Lindau's case. The post read, "I have questions." Moscow law enforcement has been running with this whole "nothing like this has ever happened here" narrative. So does anyone care to explain this? University of Idaho student Hudson Lindau was found dead in Paradise Creek. You read that right. Another student from University of Idaho died earlier this year. Wait, what? This is stating he was found dead May 1st, 2022, not January? Not January 5th, found dead? Okay, I don't know if this is a typo or whatever. Context, April 30th, 2022, the night before, Delta Tau Delta held its 90th annual ball. Xana, Maddie, Jake, and JS were all in attendance. Hudson's body was found the next morning in the creek right outside Greek Row. Hudson's death was ruled an accidental drowning. The post further read, could mean literally nothing, but also here's a picture of Hudson outside of the girl's house and a map to see where his body was found in relation to the frat sororities. One of Hudson's friends, blurred out in the photo, is Delta Tau Delta's president, the same frat JS was supposedly kicked out of. And riddle me this, where are all the stories on this investigation? Police immediately said there was no foul play upon finding the body. How? What led to him ending up in the creek that night? Everyone was just like he drowned and moved on. The last post read, not trying to create conspiracy theories here, but for a small town, there are sure some crazy coincidences. Make it make sense. And that's the other thing, too. Like, if this is, like, a big party house, I mean, a lot of people would have connections to this house. And if some of these people end up dead, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a link to the people in the house. The information provided above by the user has no confirmation. It's just a theory and speculation shared by the user. We are not sure whether these cases have any kind of tie with the recent Idaho student's murder case. Current status on Idaho murder case. Their housemates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, reportedly witnessed the executions, but managed to flee uninjured. They allegedly found the bodies and woke up hours later to call 911. Police in Idaho said that Mortensen and Funk are not suspects, despite the fact that they are still unsure of whether the attacker specifically targeted the students or their apartment. Police expressed concerns about the incident once more on December 1st. Even though no suspects have been identified or a murder weapon has been located, the public is urged to come forward with any information. So, is that new? Woke up and called that? I mean, I don't know. The phrasing here is kind of weird. So did they... Bethany is a member of the sorority Phi Beta Phi. So one of them is a sorority member, the other one is not, out of the survivors? Or are they both? Also in this Daily Mail article, a neighbor who lives in an apartment block next door and asked not to be named said the property was notable for comings and goings, often late at night. He said there's always parties at that house and people going in and out, and there's usually some noise from there. But I didn't hear any on Sunday morning. No screaming, no gunshots, nothing. That's kind of weird. Huh. So in any case, though, if this is that popular of a party house where people come and go at all hours of the night, who would be brazen enough to do this? I mean, it's... Again, we go back to that, especially possibly with the police hassling people nearby. There's also another inconsistency where supposedly the front door of the house was left wide open, and yet the police state they believe the killer entered through the sliding glass door on the second floor. From Oxygen.com, it states here, Steve Gonsalves revealed at the Wednesday vigil that his daughter and Mogen had fallen asleep in the same bed the night they died, according to the Statesman. Gave an interview to Fox News on Saturday. He revealed further details of the murders. He claimed that he was told that his daughter's injuries were significantly more brutal than Mogen's, even though they were killed in the same bed. He also stated that Kernodle and Chapin were asleep on the second floor of the house when they were killed, and that police are speculating the killer entered the home through a sliding glass door on that floor rather than the front door on the first floor where Funk and Mortensen were asleep. Gonsalves and Mogen were asleep on the third floor. Also, he states here even though they were killed, had fallen asleep in the same bed. So does that mean they weren't planning to go to sleep? Had fallen. Again, unknown here, really. And again, I've mentioned this before. Was that a common occurrence, or were they afraid to be in different rooms for some reason? Some people also are questioning that one or both of the roommates had online activity after 3 a.m., supposedly when they were sleeping the whole time. So again, that is not verified, but just another one of these weird rabbit holes. And it's about to get even weirder. I was able to verify here through KHQ.com, nonstop local news and NBC affiliate here, that Lindau was pulled from Paradise Creek Sunday, May 1st. So the dates were correct in that Twitter post. Moscow police say a body in Paradise Creek was found Sunday, May 1st, 11 a.m. So if, I'm assuming they verified that this, the party or gala or whatever on Greek Row was the night before. So how many other mysterious deaths or possible suicides were ruled as such instead of murder that may have been murder in Moscow, Idaho? Actually found another one here too. The Lewiston Tribune. UI student's death raises questions. January 23rd, 2013. Associated Press. In this undated photo provided by Moscow, Idaho Police Department, University of Idaho student Joseph Weiderich is shown. The body of Weiderich, 18, was found by trackers with Latah County Search and Rescue under the Paradise Creek Bridge, police said. At this point, we don't believe any foul play is suspected, according to Moscow Police Chief David Duke. The Moscow Police Chief's name was David Duke. Okay. Here's an article from Daily News, Moscow Pullman. Student highly intoxicated at death. UI forms task forces on Greeks and on drug abuse. Weiderich BAC was twice the legal limit. Parents upset no one helped their son. Article by Brandon Max. February 15, 2013. Toxicology report for University of Idaho freshman found dead under a Moscow bridge last month shows his blood alcohol level was at least 3 times the legal limit when he left a frat party and twice the limit when his body was discovered 1 day later. Wait, how do they know it was 3 times? I guess they're just estimating. Joseph Weiderich, 18, of Haley, Idaho, had been attending a party at the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, January 19th, with his Theophilus Tower roommate when they were separated, and he never returned home. His body was discovered on ice under a bridge under Mountain View Road around 4 p.m. January 21st. Police determined he'd walked nearly 7 miles before falling down in the frozen Paradise Creek bed where he died of hypothermia. Moscow Police Chief David Duke said a toxicology report shows Weiderich's blood alcohol content at the time of death was 0.17, meaning it was somewhere around 0.25 to 0.3% when he left the fraternity. Marijuana was also discovered in his system. Duke said the lead investigator in the case Thursday cited Weiderich's friend Dakota Vugwert, 18, of Haley, for allegedly providing alcohol to a minor. Weiderich had gone to the fraternity party to visit with Vegwert, who was pledging there at the time. Latah County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt said she had expected other substances would have shown up in Weiderich's toxicology report. I've heard of several of the students who have been disoriented, so it certainly made me think it was something else, she said. That's all that really showed up. All of the drugs would keep absorbing and some don't last as long. We've tested for a lot of stuff and it came back negative. The results of the toxicology report were shared with Weiderich's parents, Bob and Michelle Weiderich, prior to its release to the public. Weiderich's mother said it is hard to be upset with the young partiers, but she is more upset with the residents her son had approached prior to his death. A woman on Highland Drive reported finding Weiderich lying on the floor just inside her house about 3 hours after he is believed to have left the party. Duke said the woman asked him to leave. Another resident on North Mountain View Road reported he'd come to her home, but she sent him to her neighbor across the street. Weiderich's footprint indicated he crossed the street and went around the neighbor's home instead, jumping a fence and crossing Paradise Creek. You can expect so much from an 18-year-old kid, but when 2 adults turned my kid away into the night, he expressed he thought he was dying and he was turned away, said Michelle Weiderich. If there is a lesson from this, it's just to learn to help each other. I think that's the thing that breaks my heart, because he could still be alive if people helped when he asked for help. Joe was not a party kid. He was not trouble in high school, she said, adding he was studying to become an architect. He definitely had the talent for it. I'm sure he would have done well. Duke confirmed Weiderich's roommate was also highly intoxicated at the SAE party and traveled south near East Palouse River Drive before correcting himself and finding his way home. Very well, we could have had 2 boys that didn't make it home that night instead of one, said Weiderich mother. Ahead of the release of the Weiderich toxicology report, the University of Idaho announced Thursday morning the formation of a substance abuse and Greek life task forces. The substance abuse task force will review prevention education programs, current policies, and enforcement strategies. We have been quite aggressive this fall and earlier in providing educational programs and doing enforcement, said the Dean of Students, Bruce Pittman. And I think the events of the last few weeks have certainly made us more intent to look for ourselves and see if there's more that we can be doing. The substance abuse task force will consist primarily of student leaders, faculty, and staff, Pittman said, with a few Moscow community members. We have received confirmation from several of our student leaders, and they plan to participate, he said. It will be a relatively larger group than the Greek task force. The Greek Life Task Force will consist of a small group of fraternity and sorority alumni, including those who have served their national organizations in some capacity. The relationship of the UI to the Greek system will be reviewed, Pittman said, with recommendations on how the relationship should proceed in the future. There are many models about how universities are related to Greek systems that they find on their campuses, he said. Some campuses, particularly in private schools, have very intrusive models where fraternities and sororities are required to be in university residences and strictly monitored. On the other extreme, there are campuses where fraternities and sororities are not even recognized by the institution. I think we're to the point where we need to ask a question about whether the model we're using or if the university needs to adopt a different policy or strategy in regard to our Greek system. The 2 task forces are expected to provide university administration with reports of their findings and recommendations by late spring. I would like to work with them as soon as we can get through this hard part of our grief process, said Michelle Weiderich about the UI. From my point of view, we've all tried to keep kids from drinking for years. Maybe what we can learn from this is to teach them to watch out for each other instead of just laughing and thinking it's funny and sending them off into the night to hopefully help each other, even if it's a stranger. Okay, so another tragic case all around, but from all accounts here, it seems like this one was less suspicious and there was some kind of an investigation. Although I can't find anything regarding Hudson Lindau in that department. Also, there seems to be some kind of a troubled history here with these sororities and fraternities. Like, how far back does this go? And also, I don't have the numbers here, but what are the average amount of deaths, suicides, bodies being found in the creek at any university with a particular population per capita, so we can compare to the University of Idaho? Does it really stand out, or does it not? But either way, we have a minimum of 2 deaths here with potential circumstances involving similar groups of people in these Greek fraternities and sororities. So, again, might not mean anything, or maybe it does. How would one know without objective investigation? So, yet another rabbit hole here. Go to dailymail.co.uk. Wife of convicted killer arrested earlier this week for beating and stalking her with a knife says he is not responsible for nearby Idaho college student murders that online sleuths have pinned on him. This is by Sean Cohen, dailymail.com, December 11th, 2022. A convicted killer was arrested earlier this week for allegedly beating his wife and stalking her with a knife, but he's now being wrongfully accused of the killings of 4 University of Idaho students, his wife exclusively told dailymail.com. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but my husband had nothing to do with what happened up there. The wife of James Curtis Leonard said Friday in an interview outside their trailer home in Moscow, just a mile from the scene of the quadruple homicide. It's not linked at all. This is really pissing me off. Her husband, 39, is being held on $100,000 bail for Tuesday's alleged attack. Police have since declared that Leonard had nothing to do with the recent killings, but that hasn't stopped the speculation. Leonard's wife told DailyMail.com that her family is still facing online harassment, including from a YouTube personality who had speculated about her husband's involvement in a video headlined James Curtis Leonard, Suspect, Moscow, Idaho, which has garnered 19,000 views since Thursday. People on the internet are trying to pin the murders on him, she told DailyMail.com. I had to get off that social media expletive. Police this week even said that they threatened internet sleuths with criminal charges if they engaged in harassment fueled by the spreading of misinformation. Leonard's wife said she was home with her husband at the time of the November 13th pre-dawn massacre and that he left for work at 7 a.m. that day. She told police about the harassment on Friday when officers stopped by their trailer home Friday to follow up on Tuesday's domestic incident. I told police that we were all tired of the threats, harassments, and allegations, she told DailyMail.com. Our family has been in danger because of all of these false statements being made on the internet. Speaking on Friday, Moscow Police Chief James Fry announced his department will crack down on internet sleuths who've been posting theories about the murders. Anyone engaging in threats or harassment, whether in person, online, or otherwise, needs to understand that they could be subjecting themselves to criminal charges, the department later added. You know what's weird, though? I mean, this has nothing really to do with internet sleuths. This is just people, obviously trolls and disturbed people that are posting threats online and all that stuff. They do that all the time. It has nothing to do with any particular case. They jump on anything and everything to just do that. So it's kind of weird how some people are kind of grouping that in with general theorizing and not calling for violence or harassment of anybody. The wife said it's also unfair that her husband is facing fresh scrutiny for his manslaughter case from 2007, where he shot and killed Tyler Lee outside his house in Genesee. He reportedly claimed it was self-defense and told police that Lee had previously threatened him with bats, machetes, and other things. In February 2009, Leonard took a plea deal admitting to involuntary manslaughter in exchange for a 5 to 15 sentence, according to court documents. The court suspended his sentence May 2009, and he was placed on 15 years probation. Police arrived at the home on Palouse River Drive to find Leonard's wife with blood on her nose and mouth. When Leonard was ordered to come out of a back room, he had blood on his hands and a large cut on his forearm. Dispatch advised an intoxicated husband punched his wife in the head and struck his daughter, according to a criminal complaint. His wife told police that he had drank half a bottle of gin and become heavily intoxicated, accused her of cheating on him, and yelled at her in front of her 2 kids, 20 and 15, her daughter's 21-year-old boyfriend, and a 1-year-old grandchild. The complaint alleges that Leonard then went into his room and began cutting himself. When his wife checked on him, he allegedly punched her. He also allegedly beat up the 15-year-old, who was later found with a concussion. Leonard was also accused of stalking his wife around the house with a knife and then slashed his own arm while she was on the phone with 911. They're throwing it back out, calling him a murderer. The wife said this was 2007 that this happened. He was young and stupid at the time, and he'll be the first to admit it. He's not the same person now, she continued, and called Tuesday's alleged beating a one-off. This is the first time anything like this has ever happened, she said. He was depressed the other night, drank a little bit more than he should have, and didn't take his antidepressants, and I think that's what triggered him. The whole night was just a big mess. It should have never happened. Leonard's arrest and subsequent harassment comes as the college town of Moscow remains focused on the unsolved murders of Kayla Gonzalez, 21, Madison Mogen, 21, Zaina Kernadel, 20, and Ethan Chapin. So, for those that say, where's the rabbit hole? Let's move on to this article, also from Daily Mail. Coroner who ruled 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death is also a defense attorney for a killer arrested a mile away from the murders for stalking wife around with a knife. Following his arrest last week, it's been confirmed that Latah County Coroner Kathy Mabbitt and her office, Mabbitt Law, will represent Leonard. What does everybody make of that? I mean, I don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean anything right away. So, what does everybody make of all of these developments, so to speak? I mean, there's definitely more questions than answers here, and there seem to be more and more questions piling up almost daily, just regarding more and more connections or theoretical connections, possible connections. What is going on here? This town does not seem to be as sleepy, as innocent, and as first portrayed, anyway. And adding in these skinned coyote pranks, this dog. I mean, people aren't really talking about the dog that was supposedly abducted and skinned not too far away from this house as well. I mean, what is going on here? What kind of activities are some of these potentially frat members or whoever else involved in? And does that have anything to do with this particular quadruple homicide? All the Mindshock listeners can chime in with their own thoughts, theories, comments of any kind as we continue to investigate one of the most shocking cases, not just in modern history, but possibly ever.